looking at your career, I mean, you've been at it a while. What areas do you think you still want to grow? I mean, when you look at yourself, where are the areas that you say, you know what, there's more in the tank to go deeper? Where is that for you?
Yeah, management of engineering, which is, take an idea from a customer. We need to set up a solar plant in the middle of the Nevada desert. Let's make it more efficient than anybody else has done before. You up to beat the metrics, you up to defy the odds on how many kilowatts per dollar we can get, or how much we have to spend in terms of time and money to get this built. Yeah, I like those challenges.
Welcome to the Intergenius Podcast with Joe Patch IV.
Hey, I want to welcome everybody back to another episode of the Intergenius Podcast. It's great to be back again this week. Today, my special guest is Mr. Sam Pherwani. Sam, we go back a ways. Sam's a professional electrical engineer and a certified electrical safety compliance professional. He's got a lot of good stuff to add today about what he's been up to lately. We want to get into that a little bit on some of the teaching that you've been doing, but let's just take it right from the top, man. Give us a little background. Where do you come from? How did you get into this particular space?
Well, Canada is home, and used to be an instrumentation controls engineer. Well, an instrumentation controls tech before that. An engineer, and then got into the commissioning side of the project, where you're the last guy on site doing the SCADA tie-up and handing the system to operations. And usually there's a component of training that goes with it. And somebody figured out, hey, wait a sec, this guy does training a lot better than he actually works, so let him teach. So from there on, I signed up with an academic institution called Epic College in Canada, taught some classes for them, like motors and drives, instrumentation for non-engineering professionals, water and wastewater process instruments and engineering, that sort of stuff, HVAC. And then got into this electrical safety after the project we did together at Siemens that exposed me to medium voltage and high voltage, and then combined it with the safety program work I did at Berkeley Lab in California.
Yeah. Well, it seems like the last couple of years, would you say 4 or 5 years, you've really kind of branched out into, teaching electrical safety all across the United States. I mean, you did some stuff out of Berkeley Lab. You've done some stuff with Epic College, Leaf Electrical up in Canada, and certainly Shermco out of Irving, Texas. Talk to us a little bit about that. I mean, for people that are watching, obviously an electrical engineer, you're licensed, you've had a really good run over the last 20 years in that space, doing a lot of instrumentation and controls. But as you're dovetailing into teaching, you're talking about how this is, having had the chance to work with you, clearly you're gifted and you got a talent to get up and teach in a way that I think is very memorable, which is really key. You got to remember this kind of stuff as you walk away. That's where the safety is. But how did that transition kind of happen, and what would someone, how does someone kind of get into this? I mean, it's a really niche space.
Well, appreciate you saying that. I've been inspired by a lot of bad teachers. Really knowledgeable guys, some of the guys that actually wrote the electrical code, but you actually sit in their class and you're going to fall asleep. There's a metric that says after a month, if you're lucky, or if the instructor did a half decent job, you're going to remember half of what they went over in the classroom. And after a year, that drops anywhere from 5 to 25%. So my nemesis is really those numbers, right? So what do you do to tell a story, to simplify and make people actually take away information that they can use in their day-to-day lives? When you use something every day, you don't have to memorize it. It's not about recall anymore. It's a behavioral change, right? When you're approaching training with that, with that aspect, with that angle, is how am I going to change these guys from whatever they were doing yesterday to a safer way, per the standard, per the way OSHA intended it, per the way the code is. You're onto something if you can kind of go down that road. That's been my journey, really, and biggest inspiration to continue doing what I'm doing.
You know, it's funny. I mean, when you're sharing all of that, I remember the class that I attended that you taught over in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and you're sitting there in a room with a large group of qualified electrical workers, and these guys, I mean, these are tough, man. These are tough oil gas guys, bulletproof, and a lot of them have been doing it a long, long time. And so it was very interesting for me to see and kind of watch you in action, where you have to engage as an instructor, you know, someone who's, you know, academically highly credentialed, with a group of men that have been working in this space for a long time. So they're obviously very savvy, and to bridge that gap, I think, is incredibly difficult. But I thought you did an outstanding job of telling some really good stories, and just keeping it kind of light, but also, you know, serious when it needed to be. The use of videos that you provided, I thought, was outstanding. I know those left impressions in my mind, certainly, and that this has been, you know, some time ago. But yeah, I kind of like how you come about it. I mean, telling the stories, but I think you're very genuine and very real, and I think people resonate with that rawness that you bring to the table. And I think that's what separates you from guys who, you can certainly cite code, but there's a difference, as you've mentioned, between citing code and delivering it in a way that changes a behavior. That, I mean, those are two very different things.
Well, it's always, every industry, it's always packaging and service, right?
Yeah.
You know, anybody can bring out a bottle of the driest of dry vodka, namely the spec, right? The code spec, the way the government wrote it. But the hard part is to get the right cocktail in there and put an umbrella on that drink and you know, bring it out with a smile and your best face, right? To make it an experience for the customer, not just a drink. So really, yes, that's kind of, every year or every time you do this, you're trying to find ways to refine that. I just know how to do it, that's all.
No, I like it, man. Well, I mean, here's another question I got for you. I mean, kind of professionally speaking, you know, how have you kind of defined yourself today? I mean, you know, now you're 25 plus years in, you've had some really neat assignments, you've taught some outstanding classes. I mean, what is kind of the way you kind of define yourself today?
Well, you know, looking back on the time I did lube checks and process instrumentation diagrams as an instrumentation guy, you know, how do I optimize this, you know, this industrial wastewater system? Or even after that, when you put me on the Siemens job and, you know, reading and interpreting code, acting as client's representative or acting as a construction engineering go-to guy, there's so many mistakes I made, right? And then, you know, going through the safety aspects of things, I would probably, you know, like to just say, you know, you put me on a site or on a job, and you're engineering liaison there for everything electrical, instrument control. To some extent, liaise with the mechanical guys to make sure we cover it so that everything that's attempted on any construction site, planned, energy station, job site should be electrically sound, optimal, safe, and compliant, and ready to go.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you kind of touched on something too, talking about, you know, failures and what you've learned, you know, from failures, and, you know, what you've seen out of others, especially in the teaching side of life, you know, the way it's been done either incorrectly or poorly, and how that's in some ways inspired you to do it differently. So it's always a question I like to kind of ask is, you know, what are, you know, what do you think maybe one of the biggest mistakes or failures of your career was, and what did you take away from it? How did that push you forward in a new direction, or see things in a different way that, you know, turned it into a big win, really?
Biggest failure or set of failures, and I still kind of struggled with that, is playing people games. Mm-hmm. You know, when you're just thinking papers and drawings and specs, it's a very linear world. math and chemistry and physics do not have attitudes. They are what they are. But when it's power struggle or, you know, engineering is supposed to do something that project management was supposed to pick up, or crisis management where you're not supposed to say something that will antagonize someone because they thought it was their territory, the nonlinear stuff. I kind of, when I look back at something bird's eye view, when I'm detached from it, both in time and distance, I start to see those patterns and go, oh, now I know what I should have done. But it's always after the fact. It's hindsight. I was not able to. What I have tried to do, you know, over time now as I get older, is to keep a substantial time between work days and use the downtime to actually analyze and re-strategize for the next day, which is why time off is very important for me. You put me on 3 or 4 50-hour work weeks back to back to back to back, my effectiveness will start to diminish, and I will, you know, the fatigue loses the strategic edge. I can do tactical stuff, yes, but you know, you're at a level where you're not only solving engineering issues, but also contractual problems, and a lot of these be strategic, and you need your edge. And some of us can't just, you know, work like drill sergeants, keep going, right? You need reflection time to actually let the storm in a teacup settle before you can know what's the best way going forward.
Right. Yeah. Well, no, I think having that reflection time is super important. I think we live in a world that's obviously incredibly connected, and the velocity with which information moves is incredibly quick. So stepping out of that drinking from a fire hose on a regular basis is certainly something I think is really, really important to stay focused on, you know, what it is we're doing and what it is we probably shouldn't be doing, right, in terms of managing the work, managing a business, managing people, you know, et cetera. You kind of hit on something. You talk about taking time out of your week to reflect. So one of the questions I also want to ask on the personal side is, what is a typical routine like for you, you know, during the day, and you know, what about your day is non-negotiable? I think you've hit on the fact that during the week you need time to reflect, which I think is great for course corrections, but what are the other things and tactics, techniques you've employed that have helped you become successful? I mean, personally speaking, what's that look like?
Oh, well, you know, these metrics also change with age and with priorities. You know, a younger man is in it for the money and the career development. When you're somebody like me that's got close to 30 years, as you said, 25 plus, you want to balance your family. You do not want to lose touch with the essence of your loved ones needing you or wanting you to be there for stuff that's going on with them. It's not just about your work when you're flagshipping your family. So that time, you know, and sometimes employers will say, I can't, there's too much going on. You know, it sounds like a tall order, but I always like to, you know, good old oil company style, if I had a back-to-back guy, or if I found somebody that was truly my equal, you'd have two guys backing each other up, and you'd still be able to do it sustainable year after year after year without burning one person up. Where you know, you tag team when, you know, there's a bit of an overlap when one ship's coming to an end and the other guy is taking over, when you exchange notes, but you also get the family component. But besides that, even if it were a long drawn job at a customer side or head office and works, if there were decent enough accommodation and you could travel, say once a month, you go to see your family, and the other time you call your significant other or kids as applicable, that would kind of balance it to still make it going. So, you know, it's the standard duty cycle, but doing 60, 70 hours Alaska or like desert, like Saudi desert, where you're doing 60 hours a week with 10, 15 hours or like 20 hours of daytime in a week down, that's probably, like I say, that's younger man's game now for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and what else? I mean, what else, like, tell me a little more about just, your daily life, your weekly life. What are the things that are important to you to get done, daily, weekly, to keep you sharp, to keep you focused, to keep you on your A game, time in the gym, diet, different,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, what's it look like in your world?
So gym, definitely 3 times a week at least, if I can manage 4. There's the morning, the morning coffee or so, which is a big routine for me. It's the time I'm actually taking the world apart and then putting it back together again in my head.
Mm-hmm.
So that's time where you're seeing what's happening in the world from your own perspective, taking yesterday's thoughts and turning them upside down and inside out to see if there's any loose change falling off. But sometimes if you have an early start to the day, that's when I'm teaching. I'll wake up at 4 if I have a class at 6:30, or if I have a class at 7 and I have to be on site at 6:30, so I can get those extra 2 hours just to myself. So, but on a normal day when it's just proposal writing, or I'm writing, or I'm preparing material for a classroom, I prefer to have a normal daylight hours type of day. And evening I like dinners with family, and every other weekend or so, get together with a friend. If it's fight night, go to a bar to watch boxing or to watch mixed martial arts, that sort of thing. And music's good. Play guitar some, so we sound better when we've had a couple beers each. So
I love it.
No secret really. It's just everyday stuff. But yeah, summers are short and are very precious in Canada. We get one long weekend for every warm month there is. So utilize those long weekends. Pretty much don't look at your phone, don't look at your computer for the entire weekend. Mm-hmm. So when I did overseas business, some of the guys there would freak out because their holiday is on a Friday, and I'm taking Friday off, Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So by the time I get back to them, it is Monday morning. We needed you. Where were you?
Yeah. No, I like that. I appreciate the insight. I mean, that's good. I mean, you definitely try to keep a healthy balance, time with family, time with friends. I know you enjoy the music, try to stay in shape, and certainly you keep coming back to that. And I think it's good for younger engineers to hear that, that there's different stages and chapters in your career and in your life. And you can take them on sort of in different ways, but as you move through your life, right? As you mentioned, things do change, but to keep that balance and that perspective, right? That time you take in the morning, whether you're on the road teaching or whether you're writing proposals and doing some work. But it seems like you keep coming back to, you need that time to kind of think through things and to disconnect, and really how important that is to set the frame for your day, your week, and even sounds like it's really helped propel your career to get to the place that you're at now, as if running around all the time, aimlessly staying busy is really not the best way to do it.
Yeah, to be creative, to come up with ways that other people miss, you have to take time off to think. I do not like to say out of the box, it's overused, but to think on a different plane and come up with an idea that is not, or that somebody said, I like that idea, that is original. Those don't come when you're grinding your nose on the stone, trying to put in all the hours just because there's a ton of work and you're trying to put as much as you can on the timesheet.
No, I think I'm just glad you brought that up. I mean, I don't think you can overemphasize the importance of stepping away. And I know Cal Newport talks about that, in his book, Deep Work. You got to step away, and that's really when the creativity comes into play. You need that silence, that reflective time. So, with that in mind, looking at your career, I mean, you've been at it a while. What areas do you think you still want to grow? I mean, when you look at yourself, where are the areas that you say, you know what, there's more in the tank to go deeper? Where is that for you?
Yeah, management of engineering, which is, take an idea from a customer. We need to set up a solar plant in the middle of the Nevada desert.
Mm-hmm.
Let's make it more efficient than anybody else has done before. You up to beat the metrics. You up to defy the odds on how many kilowatts per dollar we can get, or how much we have to spend in terms of time and money to get this built. Yeah, I like those challenges.
Okay. Let me kind of rounding it out here. What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given that you can share with us? And it could be personal. It could be professional. I mean, this part of this podcast is to explore the professional and personal unique nature of every guest. So take it any way you want, but what's the best piece of advice you think you've been given, you've seen play out in your life kind of again and again and again?
Well, wise old man, he left us. He was a friend of my dad. He told me once, I was all, this was the time where U.S. economy was booming, and everybody in Canada thought that the streets of America were paved with gold. We're hearing about sign-up bonuses and what have you. So, I was talking to him about, should I leave Canada, go live in the United States, or should I, come back home? The old adage of everybody comes back home to England to die. They go across the world for their conquest. He kind of said it in a way that made sense to me. He said, look, there's 24 hours a day, and 8 hours you're asleep. It doesn't really matter where you are. You're asleep. So there's 8 hours of work, and there's 8 hours of other stuff, right? When you deduct the sleep. So when you're young, the 8 hours of work will drive your life, will take you to where you want to go. It's like, my career is important. I speak Spanish. It's in South America. I will, in my younger days, spend all my time in South America. Mm-hmm. After a while in your life, the other 8 hours will start driving where you're going. Like, what really matters to you? Does your hometown matter, or did you go to South America and find a beautiful young señorita who you want to live with? Then you will continue to live there. But it's a shift that happens in everybody's life, where the time they spend outside of work starts taking precedence and will determine their career or work trajectory after. Kind of goes with the settle down. What do you do when you settle down?
Right. Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing with that. That's good. It's a good perspective. I can't say I've heard it framed like that before, but it's you're giving me something to chew on. So this is good. This is good. Let me ask you this. I appreciate you making the time for coming on with us today. And you maybe if people want to get in touch with you, right? They've got a question, something that they heard in this podcast. They want to kind of direct message you or get in touch with you, make a specific question, or if they want to talk about electrical safety teaching and the programs and the classes that you offer, and they want to get in touch with you in a professional capacity, what's the best way to reach you? Maybe there's a couple of methods. What should someone do?
Yeah, probably LinkedIn, I'd say. That's the one social media for professionals forum that I still subscribe to, and every once in a while I'll post something, or I'll go read what other folks have to say. That's pretty much it. So you can just put my name in there, Sam Pherwani, and I have a hard to spell last name, and it's not too common. You can find me there, hit me up, and be sure to ask if you need my help with any interpretation of what the code says for electrical safety, or just the National Electric Code or Canadian Code. It's so long drawn, but it's best explained by violations. So you kind of know what not to do to know what to do, type of thing, or other like topics, or if you just want to share what you're doing, kind of nice, for sure. LinkedIn.
All right. I appreciate that. Yeah. And I can vouch. Sam's a great guy, easygoing. Definitely will get back to you. Always happy to share and collaborate. So by all means, take the opportunity, hit them up if you got a question or a thought that's been generated from this podcast. If you want to be a guest on the show, head over to our website at www.intergeniuspodcasts, all one word, .com. Fill out the intake form, and we will get back to you. And until next time, remember, there's a genius inside of all of us. It's up to you to discover it, harness it, and share it with the world. So the question really is this: what's your inner genius?
This is the Padua Podcast Network. PaduaPodcastNetwork.com.